Hello, everyone. My name is Moala. Tonight, it's my pleasure to open this panel and be your host. Thank you for joining in. I would like to welcome everyone on behalf of Dialogue Institute Austin. Our mission is to promote mutual understanding, respect, and cooperation among people of diverse faiths and cultures by creating opportunities for direct communication and meaningful shared experiences. Almost all programs were in person, face to face, but during the pandemic, we continue our tradition of finding excuses to bring everyone together virtually. Please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn the notifications on because our next program, live virtual concert called Beating the Pandemic on Note at a Time, will be on May 17th at 3 p.m. Now, I'll briefly introduce our speakers for tonight. Father Michel worked in Vatican as head of the Office of Engagement with Islam and headed the interreligious dialogue offices of the Federation of Asian Bishops' Conferences and the Jesuit Secretariat in Rome. Father Thomas Michel has a doctorate in Islamic Studies from the University of Chicago. He taught at Sanada Dharma University and Georgetown University School of Foreign Service in Doha, Qatar. He is now on the staff of the Xavier Learning Community in Thailand. Our second speaker is going to be Rabbi Holberg, who received his rabbinic ordination from Hebrew Union College, Jewish Institute of Religion in New York City. Reby Frohlberg was awarded an honorary Doctor of Divinity degree in recognition of the 25th anniversary of his ordination. He is fascinated by the work being done on the intersection of Judaism and mindfulness practice, including mediation and yoga. And our last speaker, Imam Dr. Bilal Sart, received his doctoral degree from Texas Women's University in sociology. His academic work resulted in a book entitled Turkish Immigrants in the Mainstream of American Life, Theories of International Migration, that he published in 2018. He taught sociology courses at the Texas Women's University, University of Texas of the Permian Basin, and Prairie View A&M University. He is a Muslim chaplain at Southern Methodist University. Before we go ahead and start, first, please remember to type in your questions in the chat box, and please type the name of the speaker you're referring your question to. Father Michel, would you like to start sharing your thoughts on how this pandemic has affected the practice of religious duties from a Christian perspective?
Yes. First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me to take part in this program. And I want to congratulate the Dialogue Institute of Austin for thinking, about arranging this program and getting it started. That was really, I think, a very good thing that you've done, and that many of us in different parts of the world, not only in Austin, can profit from it. Well, from my point of view, I don't know how to begin. It seems to me like what can be gained? What do we gain by continuing to practice our religious duties during this pandemic of the coronavirus? I think, to me, one of the most deep reasons for doing this is in practicing our religious duties and staying close to God and staying close to our Creator. It strengthens us against meaninglessness, against absurdity. It can seem so absurd, Here our lives were going along normally. We had plans made for the summer. We had students had their educational plans. So many things were foreseen, and they've all been changed. people had jobs, and suddenly they didn't have jobs. The work that they had planned to do with the what they earned from their jobs, that all had to be changed. And it all seemed like so arbitrary. It just all cut down in the middle of our lives. I think it can seem absurd if we don't really try to to stay close to and maintain our closeness with God. However we understand God, I think that many people. I live in Thailand, where most of the people, in fact, are Buddhists, and they don't talk about God, but they do have this sense of a deep meaning to life and a deep reason for living. Now, as a Christian, I find my closeness to God through prayer, through the Christian prayers, to really give me the strength I need. I think the second reason is we get a consolation from our faith, from our religious practices, and I think this is a strength against sadness. Things that we miss, things that are not going to go right, things that are messed up, plans that are broken. I think we can find strength in the teaching of our scriptures, of the Bible, of the Quran. That makes us strong. And maybe the most important thing that we can find in our practice of religion these days is hope. It's really, we can fight hopelessness. We can fight just sort of giving up on life, giving up on any reason to to live our lives and take care of ourselves, to be concerned about others, to think about others. And of course, this also, our religious practice directs us to be thinking about others, thinking about those who are sick and dying, think about those who've either lost or fear losing their loved ones. There's so much. I don't know about you, but I've a good friend of mine that I was ordained with 53 years ago. He just died 2 weeks ago. I've had a number of real friends who have died. Our religious faith makes us think about those who are in danger because of their work professions, and makes us think about the unemployed, the underemployed. People are struggling to feed and support their families, whether we are Jews, are Christians, are Muslims, are another religion. It teaches us to be not so self-absorbed and self-concerned, but to be thinking about others. I think this is one effect really of our religious practices. We think about those who are separated from their families, and those who are in special danger, the elderly, the sick, people living in slums and overcrowded conditions, prisoners and refugees. And I was in a refugee camp of Syrian refugees not too long ago in Greece, and the living conditions were already really awful. You'd have 3 families, sometimes from 3 different countries and language groups, living in one single tent, so that in these overcrowded conditions, any kind of social distancing is impossible. There's no testing. There's minimal PPEs, respirators, and hospital facilities almost non-existent. Well, we can easily forget about the suffering of others, but our religious practice continually calls us back to what's going on in other people's lives, not only in our own lives. And I think that really is one of the most important factors in practicing. How do we do it? Well, my family and friends and myself, we have a mass on Zoom every Sunday morning, and started out to be just kind of my own sister's family, but then it came to be our fuller family, and friends from Virginia and friends from California and from Texas are joining. And it's really a time of, as I said, time of consolation, time of hope, time of thinking about others. And I'm running out of time for my personal reflections, but I did want to just close with a good friend of mine who is a Bangladeshi poet. And here's how the way he puts it. He writes, "Giving reflects humanity and the presence of God in each one's heart, surpassing self and nurturing care and love for those who are forgotten and need the most around us and beyond." So I'll stop here and give my fellow speakers a chance to share their ideas, and then I'll be available like them for the question and answer period later on in this hour.
Thank you so much, Father Michelle, for your insightful words, especially that you mentioned that most important thing is to finding practices of our religion is hope, hoping that the same conditions can apply to everyone, such as you mentioned, prisoners, refugees. And you also mentioned about our religious duties calls us to think about who's in danger. So thank you for pointing out to the people who need help during especially this pandemic. Now our next speaker is Reby Frohlberg.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Now, yes.
I had myself muted because I'm at home and we had dogs barking in the background, and I didn't really think anybody wanted to hear that. Also, to say how honored I am to be on this panel, and I guess part of what I can contribute here is the perspective of someone who is a working congregational clergy person, a working rabbi, and kind of what's going on here in Austin and in my community. I want to kind of do this by kind of running through what I think were some really interesting and fruitful questions that we got by email. And the first one was, how would you interpret this pandemic from a religious viewpoint? And I thought about that and said, that's huge. You know, how do I even work my way into that? But I think of all the things that someone might say, I would focus on this. I once heard a scholar speaking about religion in general and monotheism in particular, and he said, the monotheistic traditions like Judaism and Christianity and Islam, we have to be careful, because he said there is a possibility for great light in our traditions that comes from the understanding that if there is, as there is one God, so everything is ultimately one and united and connected, and we're all one humanity and we're all one people, and these divisions and these differences that we see between people are trivial in comparison to our shared humanity. He said that's the sort of, as he put it, the light side. He said the other path, which is a much darker path, is one that says, yes, there is one God, and I have the only route to that God, or I have the best route, or I have, right? And it's, he said, it's a short distance between that and therefore the way you do it is inferior, has to be suppressed. The only reason I'm bringing that up is because for me, from a religious standpoint, maybe a theological standpoint, if there is anything that we might live through that reminds us that the divisions between different groups of human beings are essentially an illusion, that they don't really exist, that it really is all one, and that we as human beings are all one, it's this. It is this, because this pandemic has no boundaries, it has no borders, it has no religious belief, it has no cultural prejudices, it just is. And we are being asked to quarantine, for example, in order that we might take care of strangers whom we will never meet, and to care about their well-being as much as we care about the well-being of people that we love and adore and who are close to us. I certainly, in my heart of hearts, wish that there were a less painful, tragic, and destructive way to remind us of our oneness, of our connection. But I think that's one, theologically, if I can use a kind of maybe a little bit high-flown term for that, I think that that's one way that I think of this. These boundaries, especially now, they don't really exist. How is the second question was, how is the pandemic affecting my community? So there is a tremendous emphasis in Jewish tradition and Jewish practice on community and on coming together. And I'll give you just one little glimmer of that. So there's this idea, there's this idea in traditional Judaism of what's called a minyan, which means a numbering or a counting, but it's the idea that if you're following the traditions and you want to have a complete worship service with all the prayers that you would normally do, you need at least 10 people there, 10 adults by Jewish reckoning. So it's very, very important to bring people together. And so this is difficult and this is painful. And we are, in the congregation, many congregations, we are relying upon the same technology that we're using here. We're using Zoom and Facebook Live and all this streaming. And I was saying to someone the other day, and this reminds me, Father, of what you said. I think with every class that we are teaching online and every Shabbat, every Sabbath service and weekday service and all the other things we're doing online, I think whatever the context or classes, whatever the context is, the subtext is hope, community, love, caring, and trying to show concern. I think that in some ways, I was saying this to someone the other day, I think that in some ways, our congregation, our synagogue right now is more relevant on a day-to-day basis to more of our members than it's ever been, because they need all those things, and we're doing our best to give it to them, although it's a big difference between being in a room with someone and looking at them on a screen. But we're using the tools that we have. Pragmatically also, for congregations that are essentially small nonprofit organizations, just to look at this for a second, the current situation raises a lot of uncertainty. How far down the line are we going to be able to pay people who need to be paid? What's going to happen with that? So there's certainly a certain amount of uncertainty there too, but Father spoke about hope. We're hoping for the best and doing what we can to plan for it. Let's see. There was a question about advantages and disadvantages, but I'm really cognizant of how quickly my time is going, so I think I'm going to put that one aside. How can believers worldwide continue to practice So this is a really interesting question. Just like Christianity is not monolithic and Islam worldwide is not monolithic, it's not one thing. There are different communities with different traditions and different cultures. Same thing goes in the Jewish community. And at least in the American Jewish community, the more liberal movements like the Reform movement, which is my congregation, or the conservative movement, certainly a lot of this technology is being leveraged. It becomes a problem, though, in those communities, for example, that strictly observe Jewish traditions around Shabbat, the Sabbath, and holidays, when traditional Jews will not use technology. They will not use the internet and computers and things like that, because it's not in keeping with the traditional view of what rest is on Shabbat, on the Sabbath. And so there it's really challenging. And I know that some folks in the Orthodox community or other sort of more traditional parts of the community are praying at home alone, which I understand that discipline, and I respect it. And there's no but. I feel sad that people are in that position, and I feel somewhat grateful that we're not committed in the same way to those structures, so we do get to use the technology. But it's difficult. It's really difficult. And I will also say to you, just looking at my watch. Okay, so I also will say to you that we are already thinking ahead to the fall and to the fact that the holiest days of the Jewish calendar year, Rosh Hashanah, the new year, which is usually in September, sometime late August to the latest, late September, early October, that's coming up in the fall. And then 10 days later, the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, the great 24-hour fast day, right? These most attended days, and thinking the odds of for example, in our congregation, the odds of our being able to pack 700 people into a sanctuary closely packed on top of each other, that is unlikely to happen. That is just unlikely to happen in any responsible way. So how are we going to do that? I was joking the other day that in our regular staff meetings in the congregation, we have lots of conversations about the future that just trail off into an ellipsis. We're in the midst of having this whole conversation, and then it just kind of goes off into a shrug, because we're planning, but we don't know. There's a lot that we don't know. There was a question about an insightful story from my community about how they overcome this ordeal and maintain their practices. I think a lot of what I am seeing is that people understand, again, for the reasons that Father spoke about earlier. I think that people really understand that this is when they really need and can benefit from hooking into these practices that help to give our daily lives meaning and structure. I'll give you one interesting sort of confluence of this, and then I'll turn it over. I'll be done, because rabbis tend to talk too long. And it's really this. So in the Bible, in the Hebrew scriptures, there is a set of instructions that says that from Passover, from Pesach as it's called in Hebrew, you count off 7 weeks, 7 times 7 days, 49 days. On the 50th day, you have a gathering, which is called in the Jewish calendar tradition Shavuot, and Shavuot means weeks, W-E-E-K-S. So the 50th day after Passover is this festival of Shavuot. Originally, Passover was sort of a springtime harvest holiday, and later on the story of the Exodus of leaving Egypt got connected with that. And then this festival of Shavuot was about beginning the wheat harvest, the big harvest in those days at that time. And later it became associated with the story of the giving of the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai. So there is this Jewish practice called counting the Omer, and Omer was a measure of grain that was brought to the temple each day, the temple in Jerusalem. And there is a blessing that is said every day. Today was the 32nd day of the counting of the Omer, and you do this little blessing and you count it. And I keep reflecting upon what a gift that practice has been right now for us and for those who are engaging in it, because at a time like this, when the days tend to blur together and a lot of people will look and say, wait, what day of the week is this? And every day is sort of strange and the same. To actually have this practice where you count and you know where you are each day in this period has been kind of a special gift. So yeah, I think that's the main thing I want to say. Only in sum to add, again, just picking up on what Father said earlier, that yeah, I mean, prayers for the heroes, the people on the front line, the doctors, the nurses, the people who are, like, I had to renew a prescription today, and I called the pharmacy and I said to the pharmacist before I hung up, thank you for this essential work that you're doing. I hope that you're staying safe. That's my hope, that's my prayer. And even today, literally about an hour ago, I found out that a beloved employee of our congregation's mother has COVID-19. So just hopes and prayers for everybody. I think that's it for me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reby Frohlberg, for your insights, especially that you mentioned pandemic doesn't have any cultural differences. So it also reminded us we are one humanity. So you also mentioned about like how community, hope, love, caring, and trying to show concern is also essential. And we are hoping for the best for everyone. And thank you for mentioning the all of our prayers goes to the people in the front line of this pandemic. Now, Bilal Sert, Imam Bilal Sert, floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum salam.
Shalom. I salute you with the salutations of greetings of Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, David, Moses, Jesus Christ, of course, and Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon them all. I would like to thank you for having me with this, honored gathering with Father Michel and Rabbi Holberg. It is already, it has been a lot of gatherings like that, interfaith gatherings. I'm very, pleased with. I'm praying you will continue doing that, online sessions like that about different topics. Of course, our topic is COVID-19 and pandemic. First of all, I would like to extend my condolences to people of all religions, races, ethnicities, and the countries, all countries who lost their loved ones because of this pandemic. I will have a couple of statements before moving forward to our main topic, which is, of course, practicing our religious duties during the pandemic. If I deviate from the straight path a lot, please warn me. So I'll try to come back to the main topic. Thank you. So I think human being has never felt this much weak and vulnerable since this Spanish flu, right? From sociological point of view, sociology of religion point of view, I have been gathering some data online and making some content analysis on people's attitudes towards religion. That is hot topic always, especially during the pandemic, how this changed. I was interested in a lot, so I started collecting data online and making some analysis. And since the social restrictions started, how people's attitudes changed toward religion and the praying. And I can briefly conclude that people are more religious than ever. We know that the American society, Indian society as sociologists, Indian society and Turkish society, even though they are modern countries, religiosity, the people's attitudes towards religion would significantly change We knew that since 1972, but this much change nobody actually expected. I think the Peterburger could not predict COVID-19 years ago while he was creating his groundbreaking work of secularization and modernity and decline of religiosity. I think his theory completely collapsed. In addition to all the happenings in the past, now we have COVID-19 and people turn their face to religion. I can clearly see that. There is a noticeable inclination to healing power of the prayer more than ever. In addition to that, the number of interfaith gatherings to pray together significantly increased, right? Maybe Father Michel and dear Rabbi agree with me. We have a lot of interfaith gatherings. That is a promising thing for me, for the future of this country. And the United States is a pluralistic country. We know that already, but we had more of institutional pluralism. But now I can see that we have more individual pluralism as well, individual relationship, individual interfaith gatherings. There's a noticeable increase in interfaith gatherings, and individuals are, coming together to pray for the same goal, to get rid of that COVID-19 that is actually all of ours problem. If I think we successfully get rid of this pandemic with the help of Allah, help of God, of course, first, and by means of our scientists who are working hard to find a cure for disease, these interfaith dialogue programs, this extensive number of the interfaith dialogue programs is going to change the future of that country as well. I'm hoping that this is one of the positive, the outcome of this pandemic, I can clearly see. As for how we should respond to the pandemic as Muslims, there are many forms of actively responding it. So there is one perspective, which is sha'ni rububiyyat, from the perspective of Allah. So this is not our job to discuss or talk. God can test us with anything. Kayfa ma yasha, whatever He likes, whatever He wants to do, He can do with us. We have this certain faith in our heart. But the most important thing, how are we going to respond this? We always pray Allah. We give us, oh Allah, oh God, give us strength, give us patience, right? But my actually other friends maybe agree with me. When you ask certain things from Allah, you are asking that conditions to be tested as well, along with that strength, right? Yeah, that patience you ask from Allah Azza wa Jal. The power you are asking from Him, but simultaneously you are asking any conditions you are going to be tested, right? Tested with this patience, with this perseverance, or with this strength, the power. As Muslims, we can respond to that pandemic in micro level, in individual level, of course, in meso level, in community level, and of course in macro level. As part of a greater society, the American society, the Muslims can respond, this pandemic. But the most important thing, the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, the old hadith book of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, like the Bukhari, start with the hadith of the intention. إنما الأعمال بالنيات. I wanna start with intention, because whatever you are doing in individual level, in micro level, meso level, macro level, whatever you do, what kind of endeavor, zeal you are doing to eliminate or to help during the pandemic is based on your intention. You are going to be rewarded by Allah Azza wa Jal based upon your intention. Your intention is the most important thing. The intention illustrated clearly in Quran. In Surah Al-Kahf, the people, seek refuge to the cave. They escape from the tyrant king. They were seeking a peaceful atmosphere to pray. So their intention was the place to defend themselves against the tyrant king, and find a peaceful atmosphere to pray Allah Azza wa Jal. So that isolation, if you accept that isolation as peaceful atmosphere to pray and make yourself close to Allah Azza wa Jal, close to God, you are going to be rewarded with that intention. Whatever you do at home, actually, dealing with your kids, spending time for their education, spending quality time with your religious teachings, and all other teachings as well for their education, and spending even time with your pets, observing them, making gardening in your backyard, and helping neighbors for shopping, some elderlies to do some shopping, and making some bread and spread before breaking your fast. All of these actions are depending on your intention is going to be rewarded by Allah Azza wa Jal. Only Allah knows what you intended to do these actions. In meso level, as community level, you can gather people and give them positive message and give them some pathways. So we are leaders, all of us. كلكم راء وكلكم مسؤول عن رعيته. What Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, says. You are the leaders. You are the shepherd of your herds. I mean, you have family members. I have 2 daughters, my wife, so I'm responsible for them. Or somebody listens to me, somebody care about my expertise or my opinion. So I'm responsible for them as well. So again, based upon your intention, when you give them good message, some glad tidings, give them hope. So you are going to be rewarded with your intention as well, why you are doing this. So in Ramadan, we are fasting already and enjoying all types of worship of the Ramadan. The Rabbi talk about this congregational prayer. What we are missing is only congregational prayers. That's all. Even some families, if they have 3 people together in the household, they can create congregation. So in congregation only, we believe that Allah multiply the reward of that worship, right? The 70 times more when you are doing this in congregational prayers. The prescribed prayers, daily prayers, are not ordered to be in congregation. We have only one, the congregational prayer we must do with the congregation is Jumaat Prayer. We are away from it. But I know some crowded families, they can perform this alone because we have 4 jurisdiction in Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, Imam Azam Abu Hanifa, and he says 3 people is enough. Shafi, Maliki, and Hanbali says 40 people. You need to have 40 people to perform the Jum'ah prayer. But the Hanafi jurisdiction, if you have 3 people, you can even perform congregational prayer at home in isolation, no problem. So we are, of course, getting away from the social gatherings. So the only thing we are away from right now during the isolation. We continue other types of Ramadan activities. So as advantage of the congregational prayer, we know that I also already mentioned, it is rewarded 70 times more by Allah Azza wa Jal. But there is one interesting, maybe, forcing to see the silver lining of the isolation. It gives us sincerity a little bit, doesn't it? I mean, we are alone, some actions, some, performing some prayers in congregation. Maybe the congregation may be a stimuli for motivation of many of our prayers. Now it is time to test ourselves. I mean, we are alone, we are in isolation. So we can closer to Allah Azza wa Jal. We can closer to God. And sincerely we can do that because there is nobody is observing us except Allah. Right? So I can mention this as one of the advantages of the isolation. Even as the world struggles with COVID-19, the yearly rituals of the Ramadan must continue like every other year throughout the holy month. The 1.8 billion Muslims, I think they have been fasting between dawn and sunset. We are spending time in Quranic recitation, of course. We are reading Quranic chapters. We make muqabala. If you haven't heard this before, in congregation, in Zoom meetings, of course, right now, and within the family we can do that too. One is reciting Quran, the others are listening and following it on other books, so that we are making the corrections of our mistakes when we recite Quran, so that we can preserve Quran. Quran is orally transmitted and transmitted in a written form as well, two forms. People memorized it, throughout history for 1400 years. There are I can tell the millions of the Quran memorizers I can mention in the world right now, among 1.8 billion Muslims, and other Muslims are responsible to preserve the written part of it. So we are reciting and reading Quran most often during the time of Ramadan, because the Quran, the revelation started and completed in the month of Ramadan. So it is the best time to recite Quran. Of course, we continue the reciting Quran, but this year, we are also praying in the Ramadan. We extensively pray for those in need, and we actually extend our exceptions from the fasting to the people who have the symptoms of COVID-19. So as you know, some pregnant women, travelers, children, the mothers, anyone who is sick, now they are not obliged to fast during the month of Ramadan. Now we extended that, it's actually, if you say privilege to those people, this right to those people who have symptoms of COVID-19, so they don't have to, the fast in the month of Ramadan. So as every Ramadan we pray, with the pandemic, we also extended our prayers to the people who are currently suffering and fighting against the virus in different countries of the world. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal in Ramadan intensively for speedy recovery for all of them. Right now we have more than 4 million people, right? 4 million people. We could get the virus and we could get sick as well. Therefore, we should empathize with those people and try to share their pain when we pray for them, so that we can maybe eliminate a potential harm or danger may come to our neighborhood, community, by feeling them, by praying for them, bi'idhnillah. So we have already charity in Ramadan. Another significant aspect of the Ramadan is the charity, the zakat and fitra we give in Ramadan. Almsgiving and charity in English. For our obligation to help and support those in need also take on added meaning this year, as our neighbors and communities face sickness, grief, economic hardship, and the loneliness of the isolation. At this point, I would suggest any person here is watching this the gathering, this interfaith program, to find at least one person or family to ask if they are doing okay in your neighborhood. Just one family. So that's what we are doing right now, and during the pandemic, and offer any help you can do, and least thing you can do, just ask them and plan it, and if necessary, fund it with a fundraiser. Americans are helpers, seriously. They love helping. They have this culture. I seen this culture after these disasters in Houston, in Dallas after the tornado, and flood after Houston. There's a culture of helping one another. So we have to grow this. We have to nurture that culture in our neighborhood, in our community, in meso and macro level of society. So how can we do that? So individually, I'm asking you, just they love helping and fundraise for your actions. But the Americans are helpers, as I mentioned before. They love helping. Just they may need frontiers in action sometimes. They want to see good, sincere people in front of the line. People will definitely join you in helping others as well. Do I have time? Okay. Just one more minute. I was going to talk about scapegoating and some term in Surah Al-Baqarah, but later, inshallah. So the last thing as a worship, again, niyyah, the intention. Uh, Following the authorities, the precautions and warnings, and following them, and staying at home, isolating yourself, and helping, as much as you can. With your intention, if you do this for sake of Allah, because you are young, your immune system is strong, your kid's immune system is strong, you are less likely to get the virus, or you can get sick or die. But it doesn't actually, release you from the responsibility as Muslim. Saving one man's life is going to be accepted and rewarded by Allah as saving the humanity's life. Unintentionally, you may be reason for somebody die. So you can carry this virus. As Muslim, and with your pure intention, staying in your isolation, and sincerely, without, you don't want to spread that virus, contaminate this virus to other people who may be more vulnerable than the weaker than you are. So that is also another kind of worship during the Ramadan we are doing. And after Ramadan, if our government, the authorities will order us to stay, so we will continue obeying that order as well. So we see this as a worship as well. May Allah accept us as worship. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sart, for your thoughtful perspective. We have some great questions lined up, but I will be able to only ask one question to each speaker due to lack of time. So the first question is for, I mean, they didn't name anyone, but the question is, what words of hope and promise can we give to our children and grandchildren? Dr. Sart, would you like to answer the question?
Okay, let me start with my own kids, what I am doing with them. So they're always, giving glad tidings to the people, our congregation, our kids is not possible. When you do this, you are not preparing them for the hardship. So we have hardship right now. So they have to experience that hardship as well. Not, that should be a cover, a blind between them, of course, to observe, to digest what's happening. But the future, I think, I show these interfaith programs to my kids. So all these, gatherings online, people find a way to socialize. People actually have more powerful cyber society now. And it is becoming a real society. Cyber society, we used to name as sociologists as not a real society, right? Which one is real? I mean, this is or the cyber society. But now we have some clarifications. We can make cyber society real as well. With this pandemic, I showed them, see that the online, you can actually make your journey to the other side of the world. So there is a silver lining. Of course, there's a positive thing of the coronavirus. Maybe we are gonna have better immune system after experiencing this. There are a lot of things to talk about. Or our healthcare system is becoming stronger. Whatever the weak spot on the human body is, this exercise. Trainers are working on that spot, right? So this is our weak spot right now. The God showed us this. Imagine that, something harsher than coronavirus and kill millions. Can you imagine that kind of disaster? How can we handle this? Now, I try to see this positive aspect of it. God making us ready for the future, the struggles, future challenges. We are becoming stronger right now. And we learn how to learn in isolation, how to continue living in isolation as well. Let me tell you, I have my colleagues, professors, weeks ago, they couldn't even attach one document in their emails. Now they are experts teaching online. So now also we try to get our kids away from online. Now we push them to go to online. We have more positive content in online as well. So that will continue. I mean, we're going to go out. We are going to defeat this. No problem. We are going to defeat this with the help of Allah. Inshallah, I strongly believe that. Inshallah, it's not the end of the world. but it's a good lesson. So when we take from it, when we use this in our advantage, I think it's going to be better. So I'm speaking something like this to give hope to my kids and my congregation, everybody. So I believe myself. That's how I think, I can be more convincing.
Thank you so much. Believing in something, what you're talking about is essential. First of all, we need to believe in ourselves first. So next question, it's gonna be for Father Michel. Father, you are a prominent figure in interfaith dialogue. So we have recently heard you currently live in a rural town in Thailand and have dedicated yourself to catering a good quality of education to underserved children who are also refugees. I have, there are two questions actually. What are your experiences there, and what motivates you for serving the humanity with your age?
Yeah, I do live in northern Thailand. We're right on the border with Thailand, Myanmar, Laos, right where the three countries come together. And we have a school there for what would you say, ethnic minorities, or what's sometimes called hill tribe students. And we're trying to give them a good education. They need it. They suffer from a lot of discrimination because they are minorities. And so what is, I guess at Christmas and Easter, I generally go for worship in the refugee camps that are on the border. And I think this comes back to kind of the first question, the question that Imam Bilal also was answering. How do you give hope? And it seems to me we give hope by remembering is important. There are Psalms of David they're just based on this idea that people were undergoing, terrible sufferings and problems, and God was always there, never abandoned them, never left them go. And I think each of us in whether our communities or whether as individuals, we know there have been these bad times, but God has never abandoned us. Right now, our school, like all the schools in Thailand, are closed. We're planning on reopening the school the 1st of June. And well, we're still doing the online teaching. My students, I was correcting one of the essays today. They're sending essays, so we're trying to keep life going on as it always has been, and trying to maintain hope. See, I think the hope is important because we need hope not only for ourselves, but to be people of hope for others. And I think that's what we're trying to give our students, a chance to have a good life in a lot of ways. Good life both economically, good life in terms of character, and in terms of spirituality, in terms of sharing with others. So that's what we try to do. Hello?
Mualla, probably. Video.
Did we lose our moderator?
Yeah, we just lose our moderator.
Did I do that? No, I don't think I touched
No, you
anything.
didn't do that, I think.
So,
Yeah.
looks like we lost the moderator. Let me take the question, the last question for Rabbi. I need to search for it. Give me 1 second, please.
Okay.
Okay, I'm here.
The question was, what were challenges you faced in pulling your community together? Can you think of any positive changes that the current ordeal brought to your congregation?
I think that it's a great question, and it's a question that I would say my answer that I might give 2 weeks from now might not be the same exact answer that I would give today, because the situation is always evolving. I think the challenge is how to maintain community and practice and learning when you can't be in the same place with people at the same time, and how to continue to maintain community in terms of things that we do around what in a general clergy context you might call pastoral care. People are sick, people are hospitalized, people have some difficulty going on in their life, and how do you reach out to them and how do you maintain contact with them? And how do you do that when even the people who are responsible for seeing to it that those things happen, the staff, the people who work at the congregation, when even they can't be together, right? When even they can't be in the same room. And I think the positive side of this is that we have to be far more deliberate in clarifying what is essential about what we do, what are our values, what absolutely has to keep happening, and then find creative ways to keep doing that. So just for a quick example, we have started now, all of us who are employees of the congregation, we have started now just calling people, especially people that we maybe haven't seen in a while, and saying, how are you? How are you doing? What's happening? You know, there's no other motivation for this call except to see how you are. And people, of course, are delighted to get a call like that. The other thing I would say is that I think that this, and my colleagues on the panel have reflected on this. The other thing I would say is that people really want to help. People really, really want to reach out to others. And so we are trying our best to make those kinds of opportunities available to them. There was someone in our congregation, for example, who had organized a mask making project for healthcare workers and for others, and so we were able to hook people up with that. I know there's in the Austin Muslim community, there's some wonderful efforts going on in that regard as well, with making masks. So I think a lot of it is just that we can't take things for granted, and that's okay. In fact, I think that's positive, because none of the goodness is going to fall into our laps. We have to work for it, and we have to pursue it. And I'll go back just quickly to what Imam said, which is this is a time for us to think about how can society be better. This is not the first or the last pandemic or other kind of huge challenge that, let's say, America is going to face. What does healthcare need to look like? What does education need to look like? All these kinds of things. So yeah, that's my response, I think.
I was gone and I'm back.
Sorry.
So these are the positive and negative sides of the gatherings, I guess. I would like to thank every one of you for joining us tonight. And now it's time for short closing prayers from each of you. Father Thomas, would you like to be first?
Okay. Oh God, we come to you at a time that is really difficult for all of us in this world. We're dealing with a situation that for most of us is really not just new, but really disturbing. And so what we ask for during this time is that you give us a strong faith in you, that we don't forget about how good you are and how good you are to us and how much we want to serve you. And give us also the grace of hope so that we can be hopeful people for others and bring hope to others and keep up their hopes. And most of all, we ask that you give us the ability to really get outside of ourselves and to try to love and serve others. We ask this prayer in your name. Amen.
Amen. Rabbi, would you like to go?
Sure. Our God, source of all life and all that exists, bless us with hope and courage. Help us to keep from despair and hopelessness. Remind us that in the face of all we cannot control, help us to seek for those things that we can do to contribute to the good and the healing of our country and this earth. May we remember the teaching that it is not our job to complete the work, but neither are we free to abstain from it. Therefore, let us find ways day to day, hour to hour, week to week, to be a source of blessing to our world and to those around us. Amen.
Amen.
Dr. Said?
آمين الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وشفيع ذنوبنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. In the name of Allah, in the name of God, the infinitely compassionate and merciful. Praise be to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds, compassionate, merciful, ruler on the day of reckoning. Oh God, you alone do we worship and you alone do we ask for help. God, guide us on the straight path, the path of those who have received your grace, not to the path of those who have brought down wrath, nor of those who wander astray. We humble ourselves in your presence. Soften our hardened hearts, forgive us, and have mercy upon us. Give us hope. If you don't forgive us, we will be losers, and don't make us losers here and hereafter. For our Lord, we ask you to stop this pandemic and give us a chance to fix our mistakes and give us a chance to do good things that we have failed to do for this world, for other people and our children. We ask the most compassionate Allah, God, to save humanity from this pandemic. Help healthcare workers, state officials, volunteers, frontiers who are fighting against this virus day and night. We ask Allah, God, to give them strength and patience. Amen.
Amen.
Amen to all prayers. I would like to thank our speakers. It was a great panel discussion. And thank you everyone for joining in. Remember to subscribe to our channel, and our next program will be a live virtual concert on May 17th at 3 p.m. Hope to see you there. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.